Hands up if you can remember a moment in time in your life when all you wanted was a cuddle, but you offered sex because that was the only way you knew how to get your touch needs met. That's quite a few then, not just me. Nurturing human touch is foreign to many of us because as adults we can often feel that the touch we receive is overwhelmingly sexual or erotic in nature. So why do we link sex and touch so closely? And why can it sometimes seem easier to ask for sex than cuddles? These are complex questions which we'll explore a little. Ask 10 random people off the street to name 5 sexual positions, and they could probably do it. Ask the same people for 5 ways to share nurturing touch, and I think that would take a lot more thought, and quite a few people would simply stop at a hug. One of the reasons I think we can grow up into thinking that touch is always linked to sex is that even if we grow up in a loving family and receive all the nurturing cuddles we need as a child, at some point, often we either push our parents away or they give us some space because we're growing up and Andrew's a big boy now and he doesn't need our cuddles. I can remember my own experience of not wanting my mother to hold my hand while I crossed the road. And in no time at all, hugs were reserved for birthdays and Christmas. I appreciate this is not everyone's experience, but it certainly is mine. Then a year or 2 passes and we start dating for the first time. So our touch needs are being met for the first time after a gap at the same time as our first sexual experiences. And from that point onwards, it is very easy to feel that touch equals sex. So who is the most touch-repressed nation in the world? Yeah, you guessed it. In the 1960s, a study was done by psychologist Sidney Gerard of friends in conversation in cafes in various countries around the world. 50 couples were observed in each country over a set period of time. The results were as follows. In the UK, friends touched 0 times. In the USA, it was twice. In France, it was 110 times. And in Puerto Rico, where things are a little bit more relaxed, it was 180 times. British convention says if you're not in relationship, then you can't get your touch needs met. So, if you're not in relationship, then that's that. I've had times in my life where I've walked around with almost permanent skin hunger, where I've had a yearning for connection through touch and an aching for that sense of belonging. Then when I get the contact I crave so much, I can still feel the imprint of their body long after they've gone. This is very briefly my story of how I started my interest in the world of touch. After a relationship ended, I knew I missed her body, her scent, how her arms fit perfectly around me. In the weeks which followed, I asked myself over and over, what was it that I was missing? Because I knew I was missing something due to the constant knot in my gut. And I assumed it was the sex that I was missing most. And then, my Eureka moment. I remember that my favourite time of day was snuggled up on the settee, watching TV and nodding off. I would wake up in her arms. I could hear her heartbeat. I knew I was safe. I knew I was cared for. And that's when I realised it was the cuddles that I missed most, and not the sex. After the split, if I tried to get my touch needs met, I assumed the only door open to me was to find casual sexual partners. But the process of finding the next casual sexual partner I found to be annoying, exhausting, and time-consuming. But worst of all, these encounters often lacked heart connection and true intimacy. I started to enjoy some of the simpler things in life, like having my hair cut, because that was the only time my head was touched by another human being. Or when change was placed into my hand by a shopkeeper and there was the briefest of connections with another. There are literally millions of people, just like I was, living and working in large cities, surrounded by people and yet isolated in their heads and in their bodies. surrounded by many, but in a community of just one. Loneliness and the lack of touch is already an epidemic in the UK, and this was one of the reasons for me wanting to start my Cuddle Workshops in Yorkshire a few years ago. Where do you go if you're holding down 2 jobs and you haven't got time for dating? Or perhaps you're single through choice, or a relationship ends and you're simply not ready to date again just yet. In a few thousand years, we've gone from sleeping huddled up together with our tribe in caves for warmth, security and a sense of belonging, to apologising for momentarily brushing against a stranger in a corridor. Obviously, harmful touch experiences have a huge negative impact on an individual, and that's often for life. And yet, positive touch is affirming and transformative. Our bodies respond to physical stimulation, and it is easy to underestimate the power of the experience of human connection. Even deep pressure massage is a major stimulus to the central nervous system. It slows down our heart rate, decreases blood pressure, diminishes the stress hormone cortisol, and increases the number of immune cells. Consensual nurturing touch triggers our brain to release oxytocin into our bloodstreams. It allows us to feel calm, relaxed, refreshed, blissful, connected. It says of our partner, "You matter to me, I care about you, you are whole and you are beautiful. You're a valuable member of our tribe." With regular nurturing touch, your health becomes better and you actually look younger. In fact, I guarantee it. Touch is the first sense to develop when we're in the womb, and premature babies who are picked up and cuddled will leave hospital on average 6 days earlier than those who are not. During my research for this talk, I saw that there is a volunteer baby cuddle scheme in the UK for premature babies in neonatal units, as the NHS recognise that all babies need human contact if they are to thrive. And yes, you heard me correctly, volunteer baby cuddle scheme. Without physical intimacy, we become more easily sick, stressed, and demoralised. We need touch just as a flower needs water and sunlight to survive. We are alone in our separate bodies, and yet to feel alive, we must connect with each other. With our modern technology, we can connect with our friends on the other side of the globe in seconds, and yet this same technology means that our busy lives create patterns of behaviour which discourage intimacy. So what can we do if we want to have more satisfactory touch in our lives? We can't simply go around just touching our friends. There needs to be a framework. Human touch is free, organic and abundant. There is no monthly subscription required. So it should be easy to find, right? Most of us don't need to learn how to touch or how to hug. It's the negotiations and the boundaries where we need to tread carefully. This is where coming to a touch workshop like mine can help. When I realised what I was missing in my life, I didn't find it easy to ask for cuddles from friends. British society seems to have created a web of shame, fear and embarrassment, which makes it difficult for us to ask. Even the semantics can be a minefield. Can I have a hug? Well, it may appear needy, although it does certainly ask for permission. Would you like a hug? May appear a gift. It certainly takes in the other person's desires first and foremost. But I'm a fan of would you like to share a hug, implying a shared and equal experience. So what are the tools needed if we decide we want more nurturing touch in our lives? Well, vulnerability, consent, boundaries, the ability to hear no and say no. So let's explore a little. I said earlier that to receive touch, no monthly subscription needs to be paid, and yet there is a price to pay, and that price is that you need to allow a little vulnerability to show by asking for what it is that you want and risk changing the dynamics of some of your friendships. We need to state our intentions and boundaries. It feels good to be hugged touched and caressed by another human being, but unless it's consensual, it will not feel good. Often we expect the other person to know what it is, what we want, and basically we expect our partner to be a mind reader. And here's the thing about boundaries. They're often fluid. Sure, sometimes means no, not ever, not with anyone. But it might mean no, not right now, not with you, not how you're doing it right now. But we do need to be able to say no, and we need to be able to hear a no and not take it as rejection. So a touch negotiation might sound a bit like this. I say to my friend, would you stroke me down the back of my body from my shoulders right down to my ankles? The other person says, well, I can't do that for you right now, but I am happy to stroke you down as far as your waist. And I say, perfect, let's do that then instead. If all this sounds a little bit new and radical, great, come and talk to me later, or join me at one of my Cuddle Workshops and we'll work through it. Nurturing human contact is a simple and immediate way to make the world a better place. To enjoy touch, the invitation is to slow right down and to be playful and to enjoy the experience, and all without an ultimate goal. Compare that with how we sometimes feel during sex, which at times can feel mechanical, with a goal of orgasm or ejaculation. It is possible to have sex and it not to feel intimate. It is also possible to look into your partner's eyes as you stroke their hand, and for that to be the most intimate activity you do all week. How lovely is it to receive touch where the other person is not trying to get something from you? Sometimes you might want to have sex or the thrill of being shagged senseless. But sometimes all you want is a life-affirming cuddle that says you are valued, you are loved, and you are enough, just as you are. Please feel free to ask for a hug before you go. Thank you.